What's up, everyone? It's Jeremy Majors here with Majors Academy Dog Training out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. We're live and talking about, well, the topic of the day is not separation anxiety, positive reinforcement. Wanted to jump on here and give you my thoughts. When I walk dogs is when I do my best thinking. So sometimes if I feel like what I have in my head could help, then I'm going to go on camera and I'm going to help. I'm going to tell you guys what I think, and hopefully you get something out of it. I am here for at least an hour. You guys feel free to ask me any questions that you like, any questions that you have in regards to dog training. And I want to touch on briefly the difference between training and behavior. I think sometimes those things need to be separated and clearly defined. So I'm going to tell you what my interpretations of both of those things are and how they do need to be discussed. They do need to be talked about, and they do need to be made clear, because I want to close the gap between client or potential customers, and I want to sort of get them to be knowledgeable so that they can make a good choice, a more educated choice on who they choose to work with when it comes to training and behavior. But again, I did want to touch on positive reinforcement, so I'm going to jump in and talk about that first. And if you guys are watching, you can feel free to interrupt and with your questions. It doesn't matter what it has to do with. It doesn't have to. You don't have to talk about the topic. You can talk about anything you like. All right. So for those of you who don't know, I am a dog behaviorist. I would call myself more so a dog behaviorist than a dog trainer, because I think there's a category for dog training that I don't vibe with. So there's been things that have made me think about what training is and then what I would consider what I do. So we'll discuss that as well. All right. So I had a thought when I was on my walk today, and I wanted to share it with you. So positive reinforcement. Okay. So when we think of positive reinforcement, certainly the dog training world, and I would even say some clients that get that they get their information from most dog trainers when it comes to positive reinforcement. Okay. So first of all, there are trainers who use this. They say positive reinforcement as a way to distinguish themselves from other types of training. And I just don't quite think that that's right. Because at its core, positive reinforcement just means you said good boy when the dog did something you wanted it to. I mean, that's reinforcing in a positive way. I think people today tend to think that it only encompasses treats, positive reinforcement only training. You automatically, your mind goes to treats and no corrections. No telling the dog no. But when I look at if someone were to call me and ask me if I implement positive reinforcement or am I a positive reinforcement trainer, I would say yes, I am. So we have to be clear about what that means. Am I exclusively a positive reinforcement trainer? No, I don't claim to be. I don't think there's, I don't think you can have a relationship with anything, person, child, dog, that relies purely on positive reinforcement. So let's talk about it. So my thought was on the walk was this. Again, I'm always thinking about how dogs teach themselves. And in doing so, is there any real um, positive reinforcement from dog to dog? I think positive reinforcement, honestly, is the hope of not doing something bad and then the overpraise of doing something good. And then with that thought process comes a reward in the form of most dogs trainers do is a treat. But um, is that obviously that's not the only way to positively reinforce. And I would say it's the superficial way to positively reinforce. Some trainers and people give dogs treats to make themselves feel better. So, as someone who stays on something, someone who works on something, problem solving for a very long time, doesn't matter what it is. It could be dog training, it could be cooking. You start to wean out what you see as unnecessary because why would you keep doing something that you realize after years of experience? Why would you keep doing it if it is unnecessary? So that's where I'm at. Or that's what I've done, and that's what I continue to do. Um, as you spend more time doing the same thing, trying to solve similar problems, you start to figure out what is necessary and what isn't. So, as a young trainer, you probably do what you think is right, and maybe you should. I mean, what else do you have to go on besides what you've learned from someone else? You can't really rely on your knowledge that you've learned yourself. So I get it. I never really could connect with the idea of positive reinforcement only. I think it's impossible. Um, and you are, again, superficially hoping the dog's appetite is strong enough to ultimately not do what you don't want the dog to do. That's why we're here. So you're going to give the dog a treat when it does something you want, and in hopes of the dog not doing something you don't want. But here's my thing. If I don't positive reinforce, then what do I do? What am I doing? If I don't positively reinforce a behavior, will that make the dog more successful, or will it keep it where it is or make it less successful? And what I'm finding out is I don't think positive reinforcement has the power people think it has. I don't think the dog really cares that much that you showed that you felt good about what it just did. Enough to go, yeah, you know what? This feels so good. I'm not going to try that other thing that doesn't get me that. They go, you know what? I'm not going to jump on you anymore because you praised the hell out of me when I didn't jump. I don't think that works because the dogs still jump. I don't think I don't think it's that much of a motivator, or I don't think it works to the effect that people want it to work. Because sometimes the best reinforcement is nothing negative. So this is the approach that I've been I guess implementing when I'm walking dogs on a retractable leash. I'm going to let you do what you want to do. I'm not going to positively reinforce you. Because I think to some degree that's wasted energy. But I am going to give you boundaries. And then that's it. I'm going to let you learn what's okay. And then I'm going to let you know when it's not okay. For your safety, for your long-term success. Now, again, I'm not saying that I don't positively reinforce, because I do. And I do think on some level it does get dogs to feel good in the moment. I don't know if it makes them want to repeat it more. Now, if you have a food-driven dog, again, I'm not talking about sits and downs and stays. I'm not talking about that. More so than I'm talking about the dog, how their mood, how their feelings are involved. So let's just take a reactive dog, for example. If I tell the dog no when it does a certain thing, and I don't say good boy or yes or treats or anything when it does that, how much more of that reinforcement, or how much of the absence of reinforcement actually get the dog to not react. So what I'm saying is, let's say again, you're walking a dog sees another dog, and it starts to get reactive. You tell the dog no, it stops, and you keep going. You don't do anything but keep walking. That approach versus when the dog walks past the dog and you tell the dog no, and then you give him a treat and you give him a celebration. I don't think that makes the dog want, or the need. I don't think the need decreases to react. I don't think that does anything. I don't think it decreases the need to react, if any of that makes sense. But sometimes leaving the dog alone and really just leaving the dog just having boundaries and sticking to that, I'm willing to say that seems a bit more instinctual. If anybody, anybody who cares to comment, please do tell me your thoughts. If any of this makes sense to you. But we can get back to it. I'm gonna get to some questions. All right, Tracy says, how's Dax doing? Hopefully he's listening well. Yeah, he is finally getting over himself, I would say. He's finally starting to let me in. He was absolutely not reachable in the beginning. One of the tougher dogs I've had in a while. Took him about a week for him to not want me to go away as soon as he saw me. I had him out with the dogs today and had him on the treadmill yesterday, and he's starting to really show me, he's starting to really allow me to be in, come, he's starting to trust me, man. There's only, if this dog would have met any other trainer, man, I could see them giving you a call with bad news for sure. Because he's tough. He's hard to reach. But the more time he spends with me, the better it is going to be for him moving forward. He can only be distant for so long. You're going to want to be who you are, and you're going to get over your initial, whether it be fear, whether it be brattiness, whether it be, you can only hide behind those two things for so long until your habits, your tendencies start to come out. And at which point then you got something to negotiate the dog with. You can say, hey, I understand you're used to having things this way. I want you to also have these things. However, we just got to change how you approach getting those things. And again, for your own safety, we have to have certain things that you have to listen to so that we can get you to realize and have a healthy perspective on what the world actually is. All right. So he's getting there, man. Yeah. Big old puppy. He's dominant though, but he did great with my dogs today too. You should know. That's a really good thing. So, all right. Okay. AMMKK says, what's your opinion to give the dog access to sleep in owner bed? Is the answer change if the dog leash reactive on walks? Opinion on dog access to sleep in owner bed. I mean, the old me would have, when it was just me and my dog, I would allow my dog to sleep with me. When I started dating my wife, there was not enough room, so I kicked him out. I also got tired of the dirt and dander and the occasional anal gland expression. So that's kind of a personal choice. Um, yeah, I mean, dog on your bed is should be a privilege. My real thoughts is the dogs shouldn't don't belong in beds unless you're alone and single. I guess I can understand that, but um, if you must have your dog in the bed, then I would say, yeah, I would ask for good behavior. And that's probably why he's reactive on leash. I think those two things are tied together. Um, I think one can make a good case that they are one results in the other. You sort of kind of need to let your dog know where their position is. Like it or not, they do operate in a hierarchy, and dogs who are reactive on leash are not being led correctly in general. When a dog is reactive on leash, they're telling you that I'm in control. I'm going to do what it takes because I'm usually in control. And so it's almost like putting the leader on the leash. It's almost like putting the leader in a submissive position. Maybe that's why dogs go nuts. When your dog is reactive on leash, they're essentially telling you again, they can't trust who's holding the leash, so they have to take control. And maybe they're just acting out a very natural thing, which is, I don't feel safe, and this is how I'm going to try to get this to deal with this feeling. So, if your dog is reactive on leash, I would make a tally or come up with a list of how many things your dog is allowed to be in control of. Like, is your dog over territorial? Does it bark on its territory? Chances are yes, which means once again, it is taking control because it perceives him or her to be the leader. It's acting out what a dog who needs to make itself feel safe. That's what it's doing. So, honestly, leash reactivity is kind of like putting the leader putting the leader on a leash and expecting it to now not self-preserve where it has self-preserved 99% of its existence is doing so. Reactive dogs just show a bunch of controlling behaviors: jumping, barking, pulling. Pulling is controlling behavior. Pissing on everything is controlling behavior. The yard or scratching the grass is all controlling behavior, all rooted in the need to be noticed. Over territorial dogs are insecure dogs. So you would do better by making their world feel more secure. And boundaries help that. So getting your dog to stay off the bed would help change the dynamic of the relationship between you and your dog. It would sort of make your dog say, I got to listen to this person. Because when you're on a walk, the dog makes that choice too. The dog says, I'm not listening to this person. I get on the bed when I want. I bark when I want. I jump when I want. I get what I want. Attention. I get attention when I want it. I'm in control. So why would I listen? Anyway, those of you who are watching now, you guys feel free to ask any question that you like. We were talking about positive reinforcement. I got a little sidetracked, but that's okay because I'm answering questions. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay. Okay. Tracy says, I think it's positive reinforcement. I think dogs positively reinforce each other, but only once the correction has happened. Such as the dog playing too rough, other dog corrects him, and the first dog realizes he has to be nice. And the positive reinforcement is allowed back in the circle to play, but there has to be initial correction. There you go. That's a pretty good description of it. Yeah. And that's more so of what I was talking about too, where it's like the positive reinforcement doesn't actually mean to address behavior that is okay. The positive reinforcement is that the dog is allowed back to play, and the correction doesn't happen again for this certain type of play. But see, that's the confusion, is the positive reinforcement is like you're giving the dog something. So you're giving, that's what it is. Even my definition is you're giving the dog a good boy or a treat, where dogs don't necessarily do that, in the sense where they just allow for space for appropriate play and then correct inappropriate play. But then again, after the correction, they allow for that appropriate play to go again, to allow to be allowed to go on. Because some dogs will correct a dog, and then the dog will go in the corner and think about it, be confused, be scared, be intimidated, be like, what the heck just happened? I was just doing what I thought was okay, and that's not okay. And then after the dog gets over itself, it starts to play again, wants to play again, and then is kind of cautious maybe about the play, but then doesn't get the correction and continues to then escalate to that point of correction again. And it may now only need a look from the corrector to say, this wasn't inappropriate. This is why you didn't feel good. This is why you went over there to that corner and pouted for a little bit, stuff like that. So pretty good observation, man. But again, I would say I love the fact that you can hear, and this is what behavior modification is. And I was telling you guys I wanted to talk about behavior versus training. That's behavior modification. That's adjusting behavior. That's saying, don't do this. Just don't do this. Everything else was cool. Don't do this. Or else. So, here we go. Okay. But that was good explanation, buddy. All right. If positive reinforcement come immediately after correction, so are some dogs can take the positive reinforcement, but for their whole chain, also the bad behavior. Hold on, let me read that again. If positive reinforcement comes immediately after correction, so are some dogs can take the positive reinforcement for the whole chain, also the bad behavior. I'm not sure what that means. It's kind of what do you mean by that? Let me read it one more time. Positive reinforcement come immediately after correction, if it comes after the correction. So are some dogs can take the positive reinforcement for the whole chain, also the bad behavior? You're gonna have to re-explain that. I'm not sure on what that means. Yeah. Okay, so let's just talk about this for a second. Behavior versus behaviorist, behavior modification versus training. I think there's training and behavior, and then there's behavior and behaviorists. Just trying to make clear what all these different definitions are, trying to make sure people can make a good decision on what direction they want to go. Okay, I would consider myself, I'm definitely more in favor of behavior. I don't like training as much as I like behavior modification. Because a trainer exclusive from behavior modification is this, in my opinion. The ones that would like to teach recall over and over and over again, teaching come. But behavior side of me goes, how do we get the dog to like you enough and respect you enough not to have to drill come, not to want to repetition wise? Because I think the more reliable way would be to get the dog to respect you and like you. And then you don't have to drill a bunch of, you don't have to have a bunch of repetitions. If the dog just likes being around you and knows that you are the leader, it will follow you. So that's where my focus is, because I think it's more realistic. I think it is something that my clients can get behind, even though you do have to address that. Because there are people who don't know a darn thing about teaching a dog how to lay down, teaching a dog how to do all this fancy stuff. They just rely on their relationship for all things. That's where my admiration comes into play. I used to live in Atlanta, and there'd be a bunch of homeless people with dogs that have no leashes, no collars, nothing. And their dogs would, the most well-behaved dogs I've ever seen. So I say that to say, training. When you think of training, it means drilling. And I'm not with that. How do we get the dog to want to do the things that you want it to do? And it starts with how the dog looks at you. I didn't teach my dog Tina to come. I didn't teach her that. I didn't do repetitions of come. That's unnatural to a dog, and also unreliable in a dog's mind. If a dog doesn't respect you, you can force it to come, but it won't reliably come because it doesn't look to you as someone to follow. So, anyway. All right. Those of you who just joined, feel free to ask any questions that you like. Um, we're here for another 30 minutes. So ask away. All right. For example, the dog react, the owner corrects, the dog stop react, the owner positively reinforced. Is the owner in mistake can reinforce also the bad behavior, the whole chain of behavior. Oh, okay. I think I know what you're saying. I don't think bad behavior can be reinforced. Well, there can be an argument there. So if you don't correct it, then is it reinforced or is it just allowed to be? You certainly didn't say good boy when it jumped on you. I mean, well, some people do. Um, but there are some people who will pet a dog when they're jumping or nervous or barking or, you know, I'm hoping that that's what that I'm answering your question right. Um, on one hand, I don't think that you reinforce bad behavior. You can just allow it to be an option. Um, yeah, you can allow it to be an option. And that usually comes from the need to be in control or it's straight up the want to be in control. Mostly depends on the dog, mostly depends on, and most of the time it's because they just want to, have to. It's kind of hard to tell, but yeah. Um, also, it is very satisfying and it's very advantageous to only speak to the dog and have the ultimate reaction, which is them minding you in certain situations. So when I take dogs for walks, I don't talk to them except for what I don't want them to do. Because I do think people over talk and over reinforce, which then it loses its value. It really doesn't mean much to the dog. You can observe the dog not even caring about the positive reinforcement because most of the time it is used way too much for uh, very little skill. If your dog sits, it doesn't need a treat every time it sits. The moment it sits, the second it sits, there's really no connection there. How about getting the dog to take you into consideration when there is a slight adjustment of action within you? And what I mean by that is, again, when we're walking, I have been walking dogs on retractable leashes. I'll allow them to go out in front. I'll allow them to pee as much as they want. Every now and then, I want them to check in with me just so they know that they do have to consider me when presented with something they're reactive towards, it just helps them consider me easier. Yeah. All right. Greg says, how about giving a bone to the dog eating the sofa leg? How about giving a bone to the dog eating the sofa leg? That is reinforcement of eating the leg. um, okay. I'm not, I don't think so. I'll just say that. I don't think giving a dog, I wouldn't give the dogs, I wouldn't give the dog any extra treat if it, any extra anything, if it chewed up my sofa leg. I would, I would, I would reevaluate these things first. One, is the dog exercised? Whenever anxiety manifests itself by chewing, question how much exercise the dog is getting, first and foremost. And then question how much freedom the dog gets when you are home. If the dog is if the dog is allowed to follow you around the house, if the dog is allowed to dictate when it gets attention, if the dog is allowed to pace around the house, um, that more so is the opportunity to get the dog to understand what you don't want the dog to do, and and to tackle the separation anxiety. It also depends on the age of the dog and the maturity of the dog. So we're kind of talking about two different things. I definitely don't think that the dog will say, "Oh, I got a bone. My behavior chewing the leg is fine. They liked it. I'm going to do it some more." I don't think that that's the case. No, I don't. I don't think that that's the case, Greg. This whole redirecting, I think it's a bunch of crap. Um, you should just tell the dog what you don't want it to do, and that's it. Then the dog will feel good leaving you alone. The dog will feel good. It's just like a dog biting another dog. The dog that gets bit says, "Don't do that." Everything else is cool. Don't do that. You're not going to redirect the dog and give it its food or its bone. I don't think dogs learn like that. So it's a no, and then figure the rest of it out. But don't do this and figure the rest of it out. I think I really resonate with that style of approach. We can be buddies, we can be pals, we can be friends. Don't jump on me. It hurts. It's disrespectful. It's obnoxious. And it could lead to other bad behaviors. So, yeah, that's a good question, man, because there's a lot of folks that think that way too. All right. I think too much positive reinforcement my dog on walk. If he sees trigger and walks calm with me, I always tell him good boy or pet him. Yeah, but my argument is, what does that actually tell him not to do it? No, it doesn't, because you're still dealing with the issue. So is it effective to actually pet him good boy? No, he probably gets way too many good boys. Most people do it because it makes ourselves feel good when we say good boy. Good job. But question whether the only way to actually find that out is if you don't do it. The only way to find out that your positive reinforcement works or doesn't work is the absence of positive reinforcement. That's how you're going to figure out to say, well, doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter if I pet him or tell him good boy. It doesn't change his behavior, doesn't change the outcome. But I guarantee you this, if you do take it away and you use it very selectively, they will start to acknowledge it more because it doesn't happen too often. But the proof is in the outcome. Does your dog, actually change its behavior when you pet it? So, one of the, I'd say one of the real experienced dog people and obviously really experienced dog trainers, they again figure out what's necessary and what's not. And they focus on results. And they can separate themselves from it. Again, I'm not saying that I don't say good boy. I certainly do. And I certainly give praise. But we have to be careful with it because most people that I see do it too much, too soon, way too soon, and does nothing for the dog. Doesn't solve the problem, does not change the outcome. So maybe the good boys and the good girls are more for us. Because they'd be just fine without good boys and good girls. I mean, I would argue that they could be just as happy with a pack of dogs without, again, and they've reinforced each other. I'm not going to say that they don't, because they do. They are affectionate to each other. They are happy to see each other. They lick each other. They kiss each other. But when it comes to boundaries, they kind of just keep it moving. So, anywho, that's that. That's that. All right, guys. Anybody else have any other questions? Feel free to ask now. Otherwise, we're going to head off. I've got to work some more dogs. But let me know if you have any questions or anything. Any comments about what I said too. Any disagreements, please feel free to. I'm here to talk and help and learn, or to educate, but I'm also here to learn too. I always know that I can learn from anyone. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we'll get. Wait. Wait. Hold on. There's a question. Here we go. Hold on. In my opinion, marking the behavior with a good boy helps the dog with a sense of urgency. Trying to think of an area where I could see that. Let's see. Behavior with a good boy helps the dog with sense of urgency. I would say this: when you're talking about training and teaching the dog a trick, Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be obviously useful in the realm of training for sure. Um, yeah. So let's say you threw a ball and you want the dog to go there and get it quickly. Positive reinforcement. Go get it, girl. Yeah, good job. Go get it. Go get it. Hunt them up. Then yes, I can agree with you that is a sense that creates a sense of urgency. I would agree with that. But again, that's more so of training like the dog to do something where my question was framed more, or statements were framed more around the extinction of behavior, like jumping, like barking, like biting, like chewing. What would the dog do with a sense of urgency in those scenarios? Would it hurry up and not jump? Would it hurry up and not bite? I don't know. You know what I mean? So those are kind of two different. Those are kind of that's where it's sort of the training world and the behavior world are kind of separate, because when people think about training, they think about sit down, stay, come, place. All the things that um, of all the things that um, yeah, those are more so the training stuff, and getting them to do that with a sense of urgency. I would I would agree with you on that. But again, what I'm talking about, what my focus is behavior, and how do we get a dog to stop barking, and how do we create boundaries. You don't teach sit down, stay for boundaries. So many of my clients have dogs who can do sit down, stay very well, perform awesome, but still have behavior issues like biting, jumping, barking. So, so that's what I was talking about, and maybe I should have been more clear. Sorry if I wasn't, but I'm talking about, I'm talking about is reinforcement necessary for a dog to not react, and and uh, and in my experience, I don't know if the effort is worth the affects the outcome. I really like teaching dogs how dogs teach each other. I kind of vibe with that very well because we can't speak English to them. So I can say no in a few different ways. And then when they perform their behaviors that are okay, they get nothing. And that's fine too. That's all I'm saying. They get the nothing is the freedom of all the other behaviors. Because you can create an overthinking dog by all this training. Some dogs are some dogs build anxiety because they're always being told what to do. And that's not a lot of dogs. Like, it just depends on the owner too, to be honest, and what they've learned and or what their temperament is. Some owners have to have the dog be doing something for fear of them making a bad choice. But I say some dogs, you'll create more anxiety in your dog if they're always in command. Whereas my approach is allow the dog to have a freedom of choices, and then the ones that you don't like or the ones that are bad and or lead to bad behavior, you tell the dog no, and then you reset. Perfect example is a reactive dog in the yard. So many people get the dog to come, get the dog to sit, and they even practice the place command. But again, that's all good and well, but the dog then doesn't really have that freedom to see what we're ultimately trying to get the dog to see. The success is limited, and it does have ceilings to a certain point. Dogs that are always in work mode or obedience, they can't just be. So again, you got a reactive dog in the yard. My approach is tell the dog no and leave the dog alone then. That's it. And then when it does it again, tell the dog no, and then the dog goes, okay, well, that I need to not do. And I kind of have the freedom to do all this other stuff. So that's cool, because that's the only thing you don't want. But if you keep calling the dog into you, if you keep bringing the dog inside every time it barks, it doesn't learn anything. It doesn't learn that when the dog sees this, that it's okay not to bark. How can I get notified when you're doing these live chats? I kind of just pop in whenever I want to, buddy. I really should get it scheduled. I'm trying to figure out how to balance. My kids are in sports, and honestly, I'm having a hard time trying to set a certain date every week. I need to do that. I know I do. I want one day a week where I can post it on Monday that, hey, Wednesdays at 7:00, this is when I'm doing it. I'm working on it. So yeah. Thanks for the conversation though. I appreciate that for sure. Okay. I think I made this mistake with my reactive dog on walk. Too much praise for natural behavior. Thanks for opening my eyes. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate the honesty, your feedback, and all that. I do have Instagram. Just type in Mr. Majors 03, and you can follow me on Instagram. No TikTok for me, but I don't know. Maybe I should. So, all right, guys, good discussion. I appreciate that. Thank you for allowing me to brain dump all these crazy thoughts I have. I just have these over and over again, walk after walk, reactive dog after reactive dog. You start to pick up on patterns. You start to experiment to see what's necessary and what's not. Some trainers are hard to move. They get stuck in certain ways, and they're afraid to experiment. I don't want to be one of those. So I've tried other tools, and I will continue to try other things, because I'm always trying to figure out the best way to problem solve, make it the easiest on the dog, make it the easiest on the owner, because it's not easy, but simplifying it, redefining it, and talking about it and having these discussions really help. So I'm not a big online dog trainer. I don't really vibe with that, but I do know that these help, and so I will continue to do it. Yeah. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you in the next one, whenever that is. Have a great week, guys. God bless.